thank you everybody for coming here. Mr. Evans can't join us, so I'm going to be running this meeting today. Let's do a roll call.
Tom Weddleton.
Dick Training.
Kelsey Bridges.
You used it, Chris.
Assembly Person-elect Christopher Constant.
Scott Stansbury.
Chief Tolley.
Chief LeBlanc, AFD.
Kevin Smulders, Office of Emergency Management.
Michael Terry, I'm representing Melinda Freeman from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Andy Honest, Municipal Office.
Al Melchfeld, University Air Community Council.
Ken McCoy, APD.
More Marks Mayor Council. Jessica, Assembly.
Jason Cates, Anchor Safety Center.
Welcome to the meeting. Mandy, thank you for getting the room ready on short notice. I appreciate you doing that. Let's see, old business. One thing we've got is update on wildfire planning for Hillside. Chief? Did you see this old business that's on here?
You wanted an update on the wildfire plan?
Yeah.
Yep. So I passed out a single sheet that's titled Assembly Public Safety Committee meeting April 5th, AFD update for wildfire planning for Hillside. If you have that, that's what I'll talk from. So as it turns out, each spring we work very, very closely with Division of Forestry, part of Department of Natural Resources. And as it turned out, we actually had a kickoff meeting yesterday, and that's the first Corky Dot, April 4th, AFD, DOS, and EOC. We held our annual pre-fire season cooperators meeting. Noel McDonald, who is the Fire Management Officer from DOF, attended, as well as Phil Weidenberg, his assistant FMO. Myself, Deputy Chief Operations Jody Hittrick, Battalion Chief Tim Garvey, who is our liaison to DOF with respect to wildfire fighting, as well as Director Spillers, Rob Fritsch, and Julie Harvey from the EOC participated. Had a great meeting. DOF reviewed the lessons learned from the 3 cooperative wildfires that we had last summer. You'll recall we had the fire behind the Permit Center at 3650 Tudor, Elmore Road. That burned for about 2 acres. DOF responded with air attack resources, helicopter, and fixed wing retardant dropping aircraft. Then we had, which could have been a significant fire, off of Highland Road, 7540 Highland Road. That fire actually burned 27 acres. Again, AFD responded, but this was a wildland fire, so we were there for structure protection. DOF again responded with air attack resources and knocked that fire down. Fortunately for both of those fires, the Tudor and the Highland Road fire, we had little to no winds those evenings, which was extremely rare. So we were very, very fortunate that we were able to hold both of those fires in a contained mode fairly quickly. And then, of course, as you recall, on July 20th, travelers on the Seward Highway called in a smoke plume around the McHugh Creek area. That fire actually burned close to 800 acres. We established a Type 2 black IMT from the federal government, and we had all the resources that we wanted, including National Guard Black Hawk helicopters that fought that fire for 10 days. And there was an incident summary that I won't go over today, but it's this document here. Tom Kurtz was the incident commander, and there's a great summary, planning document, and lessons learned that we're using to guide us in this 2017 wildland fire season that's upcoming. Some of the things that I think are important to note: the third Corky Dot, we talked about the boroughs, joining boroughs, the Kenai Peninsula Borough and the Mat-Su Borough, response planning for 2017. We will have a larger tactical communication and coordination meeting later this month with Division of Forestry, as well as the 2 volunteer organizations, Chugiak to the north, Girdwich to the south, and representatives from the 2 adjoining boroughs as they can meet. One of the things that we did most recently within the Anchorage Fire Department is there's a red card standard that people have to meet in order to be deployed. So if there was an incident like the Sockeye fire and they needed AFD resources, they actually look for people who carry what they call the red card. Part of the certification of the red card is an arduous hike. You have to demonstrate the ability to travel a certain amount of distance with a certain amount of weight on your back. Our firefighters typically don't do that. We're a structural fire protection group, and we had a number of injuries with people trying to meet the time standard, carrying the weight, walking the distance. So we've gone away from the red card standard and adopted, working with the union and HR, what we call a physical performance assessment. And we do that in coordination with Denali Occupational Health, which is our medical provider, and our medical director, Dr. Mike Levy. And that PPA, physical performance assessment, mimics the things that we typically do. Carrying hose, going up ladders, crawling through substructures. And it's a timed event, 8 minutes and 3 seconds, has to be completed. We've only had 2 failures out of the 315 people that have taken it. But the long and the short story is we don't do the red card anymore, but if the fire management officer from DOF wants to utilize AFD resources in the future, that's what that corky dot there means. The FMO can authorize the use of non-red card AFD firefighters for cooperative responses. So that's a very good news, and it benefits the larger, tri-borough municipality community. Also, working with Director Stillers, all of our AFD frontline engines have the 7,000 series radios, which allows us to access the DOF frequencies. And when we do go into a cooperative incident command type firefighting mode, the Division of Forestry will take command as they did with the McHugh Creek fire, and we will be there to support. So DOF will be utilizing their radio frequencies. So having the use of these 7,000 series radios from the EOC allows us to directly communicate with DOF, which is, as you know, absolutely essential. Also, any cooperative mutual aid responses involving the Mat-Su Borough, Kenai Peninsula Borough, and for them coming in to help us, that will be directly managed by the FMO, and we will be in a support mode as we were with the Creek Fire. Lastly, we also have a one-page handout. This is very important in last year, and we'll be doing public service announcements. To keep this simple, the terms are ready, set, go, and they're defined here about being fire adapted and ready. One of the big programs that the Anchorage Fire Department has, and supported by our 4 hillside stations in John C., a contract forester, is the FireWise Home Ready Assessment Program. So that's a big part of being ready, that you're just not unprepared in the event that something happens. The set is situational awareness. Be aware of the situation. Stay tuned to Nick Stoll, Twitter, Facebook, local news, both televised and print media, about what's going on. And then the go is act early, act quickly, and act decisively. So you'll be hearing a lot more about this, but it's a simple way to sort of alert the community to fire evacuation terms. And it's ready, set, go. It can't be more simple than that. Some of the specific planning that you'll see in the last corky dot with the sub-bullets is some MOA specific response planning for 2017. For wildland fires, should FUC is fire under control. Should fire under control not be a near-term event like a grass fire, or once we realize that our assets aren't capable of meeting the fire situation, DOF will be notified. An ICS, incident command system, will be established, also with an evacuation branch, and that's so critical for the hillside. And what is important is we make access to 2 wildland fire mapping strategists. They're both located out of Fairbanks, but of course they have instant access to everything that we have, and they will be doing the fire modeling course, dependent upon winds, temperature, humidity, and using those models, we'll be working, of course, very closely with Chief Tolley and his assets to establish the evacuation route. We do have some pre-planned roads, but of course, it's all dependent upon the winds and which way the fire is going. But working cooperatively with the EOC and APD, as well as these fire behavior specialists, we should have real-time maps. They're also introducing in a controlled manner the use of drones. We did have a private citizen fly a drone near the Elmore fire back in May, which actually interrupted the fixed-wing aircraft. Helicopters will come into a fire scene, fire area, if there is a drone, because they feel they're capable of maneuvering around it. Of course, we are already be broadcasting to get that citizen drone out of the area. But fixed-wing aircraft will not come in to a fire area if there are uncontrolled drones. So you may see drones in the future, but those drones will be operated by the Division of Forestry. And what's very important about those, of course, is they have instant lat and longitude. So they can trigger as they're flying around exactly the perimeter of the fire, which is a tremendous benefit for these fire behavior specialists. Of course, EOC is always active when we have major fires, and they're responsible for mass care planning and accommodations, including pets and horses and other animals. We work very closely with Director Spillers and his group. And then within the AFD, we have a duty officer on at all of the times, and that duty officer will be responsible with liaisoning with the professional and full-time public information officers that work for the DOF to get out community information through all the media, including Nixle, Twitter, and Facebook. So we feel that we're in a very good position for any event in this particular spring. What's the benefit that we have this year that we didn't have last year? We have tremendous snowpack, and it should be a later breakup, which may reduce the dry season, the time between the snow is melted and the time of green-up. Last year we had a very extended period because we had a record low snowfall. So we're encouraged this year, again, the cooperation between the entities here in the municipality as well as with the Division of Forestry are very, very strong, and we anticipate that we'll be able to meet and defeat any particular wildland fire that we might encounter this spring. So, any questions?
Oh, we got some questions.
Okay.
What will the minutes reflect that Mr. Pearson joined us about 10 minutes ago? John? First question.
John C., did that grant he works under get renewed?
No, it did not. So we have very, very limited funds for John. John's principal activity will be coordinating the 4 stations that actually perform the FireWise assessments. Over the past couple of years, John has worked with each of those stations and trained them in how to do these assessments. So we'll be making limited use of John C. But he's a great asset, and a lot of times he works for free.
Okay. And then, so that's the evacuation. One of the things that I guess we've known for many years, but it was highlighted last year, is there's some road connections throughout the hillside that are missing that would be
Yes.
an advantage for, well, is there any, have you made a list of what those might be and started a process for creating?
We did make a list. We made a presentation. Well, we presented that list to the city manager last year, and they had that under consideration. But as you can imagine, it's tremendously expensive. Those roads aren't connected for a reason. It's expensive to do so. So we know where those are, and again, working with the Anchorage Police Department, we'll work around those road interruptions.
Okay. Then we talked last time about that fire hydrant. It's got like 6,000 gallons a second coming out at Justin Reed or something. Is there any reality of creating a hydrant there?
No, because it's too too expensive, but we did have Battalion Chief Kevin Keane went up and met with Justin Green, walked the property, made a physical assessment, but we're quite confident that the use of our tenders through the existing hydrant systems, particularly the one at Service High School, meets our needs versus the expense of creating a private hydrant.
Does he know that?
Not officially, but we have, but that was communicated to him by Kevin Keane, BC Keane. It's my fault that I haven't officially responded back to Mr. Green, as well as his neighbor that wanted us to put in some tankage on his property.
All right, good, thanks.
Anything else, John? Pete, anything? Chris?
I actually do. You listed that you have this Ready, Set, Go community education planning. Does that engage local stakeholders directly, or is that more of a communication strategy?
It's a communication strategy.
So is there a plan to work with kind of local leaders? Because I have actually in my campaign heard from people on this very topic asking, what do we do if?
The most expedient way, beyond just the broadcast to the public in general, is our attendance at the community council meetings, both at the Federation Community Council meeting and then with the individual community councils like Putnam O'Malley. We'll have Station 9 go. They'll go with the flyers. They'll talk about the Ready, Set, Go program, and then be prepared to answer any questions or go to other meetings.
Just a little point of opinion, and I think it could be smart at some point to identify who some key players are and start building a network of communications among
People like you.
Well, but I live in downtown.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It seems like there's an opportunity.
Good. Thank you.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Weldon, you talked about road exits out of the hillside. And so I'm wondering where we are with creating another exit. Do we need to acquire land to do that? Or where are we in creating that secondary exit off the hillside?
I'm not aware, Senator Peterson, of any movement to create additional ingress or egress from the hillside beyond what's already established.
Just general comment on that. It's not necessarily some huge new road. I mean, there's some like Mountain Air coming down to Bear Valley School. It's a big one, but some are short connections. Connect Burge to Yarmouth or something like that.
And that's
they're platted. It's money though.
That's the list that we gave to the municipal manager.
So it's not
I think there were
only-
5. I think there were 5 or 7 connection opportunities, but some of them were quite expensive because it was a big trough that had to be covered.
Some of the only deal was a fire on the hillside. The problem is with that public all that, you'll see everybody that runs trying to drive these and access going through the hillside. I'm not quite sure if they want to do that. Sure goes. Yeah. That's all we've got, but thank you. Chief, do you want to continue on your portion, or are you done?
Well, I'm basically done, other than saying, expressing my tremendous disappointment in the attack ad that was aired beginning last week against Proposition 2. That body of supporters completely misinformed and led the public to vote 54% against that. My budget, as it stands today, is now insufficient to accomplish the mission of the Anchorage Fire Department in 2017. I've got a meeting this afternoon with my command staff to begin to discuss what the consequential options are to us. I'll be meeting with the municipal manager at 4:30 this afternoon. I'll be meeting with the executive board of the IAFF tomorrow. And following those discussions with the approval of the mayor and the city manager, there will be some operation changes within the Anchorage Fire Department, given that we don't have the funding that Proposition 2 would have provided us. It was disappointing. I did call one of the former mayors, and he was unaware that we were talking about incrementally adding 2 ambulances new ambulances incrementally, you have to fund the additional
You have to
firefighters.
fund the people to.
You have to.
It's one thing to get the equipment, but you've got to have somebody to man the equipment.
And we did this under the Maestrom administration in 1999. We did this under the Wirtz administration in 2002, the Vegas administration in 2007, and the Sullivan administration in 2010. And how they could characterize this as sort of a deceitful act is just so terribly disappointing to me. And further, I'm disappointed that they didn't call me and ask, why were we doing this? Why is it a good thing? And are there any negative consequences associated with the failure? And they didn't. So as a fire chief and as a citizen, I'm extremely disappointed.
Appreciate that, Chief, because many of us voted for it, and we were shocked that it didn't pass. Because when you got an emergency, the one thing you want is a paramedic to show up, get a hook you up to life support, or transport you to a hospital. And for us to cut away at that, it's not good for the citizens of this town. So thank you for your support.
And I did send an email out to all of the department personnel this morning, expressing my disappointment, but reminding them that we are a resilient department, we're a progressive department, we're a widely respected department, and for them to stay strong and to stay safe.
It's great to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McClung, for your comments, and I just have one comment to make. I think it's really sad that these four former mayors who ran a city put politics before public safety. Very sad. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chief? Yes. Let's talk about EPD.
Staffing breakdown at the end of the quarter for you. So we know that in 2010 is when the PERF study was done, and it wasn't until, it hasn't been since 2009 that we were at that 400 mark. In January of 2017, we got back to 400 officers. But we also know that that includes individuals who are in field training as well as in the academy. I'm happy to report that the 24 officers who were in Academy Class 16-2 will begin to come out of field training and go solo starting this month. And the vast majority will be out by late May. So that should really help our own street staffing, which is that 350 mark that you see on there. We haven't had 350 since 2013. The 16-3 Academy, which started in December, they graduate June 1st. And that'll put those 29 officers into field training phase. And then we have 2 academy classes scheduled for 2017. Those are still on track. We fully anticipate the July Academy 17-1 should be a full academy, at least 28 officers. And then our goal is, again, to have another full class in December. So we're on a good trend here. We still will probably lose right around 10 officers over the next couple months. Remember, I briefed the assembly that we have 95 individuals that are eligible to retire, and we're hoping that those numbers will be held down. So there'll be a little bit of more loss before that next academy class starts, but we think the strength ultimately will be in the growing pattern, and we're very happy about that.
Some other questions? Pete, since you've gone for these 2 academies, any questions? Now this will be your ad.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think, and I may have missed this while I was on the phone a second ago, the class that graduated on December 1st, when do they get to be out on their own? Is that coming up real soon?
Yes, sir. They start going solo mid-month of April, and the vast majority will be solo by mid-May.
Great. And so that allows you to add some additional personnel to some of the specialty units?
Well, patrol comes first. and That will really depend on how many people ultimately retire this spring. Right now, our numbers are gauging right around that 10 mark, but we do have 95 individuals that are eligible to retire. And our best guesstimates right now are about 10 over the next 2 or 3 months.
All right, great, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You mentioned the perf study earlier. Could you give us a short blow on what the perf study says? I've got it at home. My concern is we've got new assembly members that were not on the body when the perf study was done. Could you just give us a one sheet that explains to new assembly members what the perf study said?
So the PERF study evaluated our staffing based on the current calls for service and current state of affairs of the city back in 2010. We had it re-evaluated, sort of updated in 2015, which basically showed the same information, that there was a need to create right around 450 officers, sworn personnel. The thought behind that is to create unobligated time. Right now, our officers are running call to call. And by having more officers, it creates unobligated time, which allows the officers to get out of the car, do more community policing, which police science and police statistics tell you, the more that the police departments, police officers can be out of the car and engaging with the community, it actually reduces crime. So it has a snowball effect. So our goal, the administration's goal, was to be at 400 this year, which we had achieved, and we're hoping to get closer to that 450 mark by the end of the year.
As we get into the budget cycle, it would be good to have something, just a one sheeter that explains that to the colleague.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, John.
I kind of change it from this. The Bay Shore Clack residents have created like a community patrol. There's 5 or 6 guys that have a truck with license that drive around as well. And I think there's others similar in the city. Are these a good thing? Are they an aggravation, or do you coordinate with them? And what goes on with them?
So each one of those would have to be evaluated and determine exactly what they're doing and what resources it will require from the police department or other parts of the municipality. And then also there's all types of other consideration, risk management wise, insurance wise, legal, we would consult with the municipal attorney's office and so on. I do not know of any standing requests right now from any one of those groups. If we would get something like that, we would be handling that through our community relations.
So they're pretty much independent of you. It's just the neighbors get together and they're connected with you at 911.
Correct.
Do you have an effort? I mean, would you encourage these kind of groups, or?
Again, I think each one of these situations would need to be evaluated and determined because, again, what's the intent of the group? You wouldn't necessarily want individuals to take things and matters into their own hands and so on. But we encourage all citizens to be good neighbors and to look out for one another. And that means notifying the police if they think something looks out of place. We never mind getting those calls and determining if there's something about or not.
So the guys at Bay Shore Class, who could they call just to make sure that they don't overstep their boundaries or coordinate with this?
So the best thing to do would be to contact Lieutenant Rollins, Denise Rollins, and then she would see that it gets to the proper command staff.
Okay, good.
And I actually think that group in particular, neighborhood watch meeting is set up with one of the CAP officers for either next week or they just had it.
Oh, they have one coming. Okay, good. Great.
So then that dialogue's begun already.
Any questions, please? Chief, you got anything to say? You're being very quiet.
Oh, no, I'll just piggyback a little bit on the community watch groups. They're definitely beneficial to neighborhoods having an additional set of eyes out. They know the neighborhoods, they know what's out of place, they know who should be there, who shouldn't. And having those eyes out on the street is beneficial to us. We just ask that they report. If you see activity, call 911, report it to us, be a good witness.
so long, and getting up there in years, so they're looking for the next generation to keep that patrol going. But if you get people that are dedicated, they can make a huge difference.
You had the same thing about me for years. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it, Chief. Let's go down to the Health Department.
Yes, sir. First, just like Director Melinda Freeman apologizes that she's not here today, but this is National Public Health Week, and the Department of Health is currently hosting an 80th anniversary, and they're hosting a free public health fair right now. It's going on from 9 to noon today. It'll also be on the agenda for next Tuesday, a resolution celebrating the 80th anniversary of public health in Anchorage. Just an update, last month, you may have been aware that Brother Francis did some remodeling to include respite beds for homeless individuals that have been discharged from local hospitals. And the medical clinic was expanded to prepare for a full-time clinic to open at Brother Francis. Well, the Department of Health, we stationed our Wellness on Wheels, the WOW trailer down there for the month of March so that they could continue services while they were doing the renovation. This week, the director met with the National Preparedness Specialist for the U.S. Postal Service, Gary Pritchard, from Region 10, to begin planning a medication distribution exercise in the near future at the Postal Distribution Center on Postmark Drive. And those are the comments from the director. And since I am the contract administrator for animal control, if I could, I just want to make you aware that we did receive 2 grants from the ASPCA. One for a new sanitation equipment, which was installed last week. And this is a one-step cleaner as opposed to the old process. It has a superior kill performance. It acts 50% faster, kills canine parvo, feline herpes, canine dysentery, other organisms. So it's a much better product. And we were happy that we were able to get that. We have a second grant for $26,000 for medical and surgical treatment for cats and dogs that are owner relinquished or for unclaimed strays. And this goes a long way in assisting us in making animals adopt, which we do enjoy an 85% adoption rate down here at the Anchorage County Water Control. Most recently, to include some chickens in a pot-bellied pit. And just a peek under a tent, this is not on the agenda for next Tuesday, but the Animal Control Advisory Board is going to propose some change to Title 17 that we help will combat some of the chronic animal noise problems that we have. And it calls for the creation of a separate mushers license under our special purpose license. And with that, we would change the definition of chronic noise, where it currently has a limit of, a exception I should say, of 20 minutes for multi-animal license holders. It would reserve that strictly for holders of mushing license, as it was intended to be when it was originally created, as well as create a notice to revoke or deny a special purpose license that would aid us in enforcement. If you have any questions on animal control, I can.
So where in the process is this now? You said Animal Control Board voted to
Yes.
send it to the Senate?
They did, and we invited the public. In fact, we did it twice, because when we first set it out, we set it out to all our partners. And then when I looked at the database of all the license holders, there wasn't as much overlap as there should be, so we sent it back out to all multiple animal licenses, invited them to speak. It has been vetted by legal, and I'm currently putting it together now. I just need to get a hold of the chair so I can get her blessing, and we'll put it in place.
Because what I want to do is send that to our policy committee, because we're going to need to hold a public hearing, 2 public hearings.
Yes, sir.
Nothing ignites the public like talking about animal control.
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that.
And how's your snake doing?
Snake, hey, appears to be doing well.
So I hear we had a police officer saved it, turned on the heater,
Yes, sir.
it's working fine.
And when I was down there last week, appears to be doing good. And
So they can put that out for adoption or what?
I'll tell you, Mayor Wilson, I don't know if it's actually up for adoption, but it certainly should be, and it will be. I mean, just like the pig, but they do have a period. They have to make sure everything is well.
We don't have a problem with kids crawling into the drop-off center anymore. We sent in one kid that got in and couldn't get out.
Well, he did get out. The APT responded, and
Eventually, how do you do that?
yes, I was quite the video on Facebook.
Thank you. Questions, any member? Thank you.
And then we also have Jason Case
Oh,
here.
Chris.
Oh,
Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the reasons I decided to get engaged in the process of working in the Fairview Business Association, we deal with issues surrounding the kind of emergency services hub that exists in north of downtown. And I received a very difficult call from a business owner where she said, "Chris, I got to tell you a story. We have 12 piles of human waste on our property. We're a third in Carluck, and my staff member accidentally stepped in it and then got in a truck and drove all the way up to Hillside to deliver a dining room table and track human waste from the 3rd Avenue Emergency Services Hub into a very nice house on the hillside." What ended up happening, she called the health department. The health department said, "Call code enforcement." Code enforcement said, "Call the mayor's office." No, this is the previous mayor. The mayor's office said, "Call the Fairview Business Association," which was me. So I, of course, called the health department, the mayor's office, and everybody said, "What are we going to do about this?" And now 3 years nearly have passed, and there isn't yet a solution to help move human waste off of our streets. This is a public health crisis, public health issue. So I'm hoping that the health department will come up with some ideas that we can start chewing on to move forward a sanitary solution to the problems we have in our streets. As my friend who had the business, who had that human waste track said, the ancient Romans figured out how to move human waste. We can do better. So I hope that there's a plan that we can pull together for that.
Yeah, I need discussion for this one, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I will take your proposal next week.
Thank you.
Let's move on to emergency services.
Sure. Some handouts here, and I hope, take a look at these things. My hope here is I can help you understand wildland fire a little better. Not that it's that complex, but this is the month, as Chief LeBlanc says, and this will complement what he's already said. We use different acronyms, and it's kind of hard sometimes to keep track of what everybody's doing. So my attempt here was to just give you a better idea of who works for who and how this thing lays out, as Chief LeBlanc said. The guy in charge, obviously, is the Department of Forestry up here, and where the APD and AFD fit in are down here in these branches. Now, it may seem obvious, but then the EOC is down here under mass care. So it isn't your typical lineal look where you have the EOC and these other pieces under it. It's a little different. You've got different agencies coming together, and they're working for different components of of the incident command of the IMT. So it's a little different than you might find in an earthquake or some of these other things. So I just wanted to put that out there to show you. It's a way to conceptualize it. It's not meant to so much to distract you or anything like that. If that's helpful for conceptualizing how the municipality plugs into a bigger organization, that's what it's for. And then the bottom line is a timeline or an event line where your operation sections, which would be your APD, AFD, as opposed to your supporting sections, the mass care piece, the OEM or EOC. So there's distinctions there. All I'm trying to do there is help you understand that or help clarify that. The other handout in there is, and I know I've said this, we've got our comprehensive emergency operations plan. And if you were to, and you can get that online, and if you were to go in there and went to Annex C of the functional annexes, you would have our evacuation annex. Rather than have you do that, I just printed off a copy and gave it to you and highlighted some key things there to look at your convenience. That'll give you a better operational view of things. It's not down in the tactical view of things that the police and fire deal with. It gets into the roles and responsibilities and those sorts of things and identifies some key terms. That might be helpful. The third thing I gave you was an example of the information sheet. One of the things along with mass care, the EOC or Office of Emergency Management would do would be feeding public information. We would be tied into the Joint Information Center that the Emergency Management team does. This is an example of what we did for McHugh Creek, and actually we blow this thing up to about a 6 foot by 4 foot piece. We actually, like a kiosk, we actually post it where we have the town hall meeting, where people can see this information and get the information, and we also hand that out. We attend with a contact team, includes the health department and other folks, when we initially go out and meet with a group when there's a potential for evacuation, and walk them through the talking points. Here's what we do for evacuation, here's what they bring, and we walk them through all that sort of information. As the chief mentioned, Ready, Set, Go is a good way to help people. It's quick, but it also complements make a plan, get a kit, stay informed, which is the FEMA approach, which is more of an all hazards. So we also preach what Chief Long was talking about, Ready, Set, Go. That would be appropriate for the wildfire, whereas another version, get a kit, make a plan, stay informed is for other types of emergencies. So those are just examples of some of the things. Particular interest to us as you look at the evacuation plan and as we inform people are people with functional access needs, special needs populations. We spent a lot of time on that this year, and then working with peer language navigators group for non-English speakers, educating them. So we have a big public outreach and education program that Julie Harvey works with, does, and we're actively engaged, and that's a big part of that. We'll get invited to community council meetings, or we'll send we'll send notes out to them about this time of year. Hey, if you'd like to hear us, or you have groups of people that want to hear us, we'll come out and talk you through any number of these things. So we do that throughout the year for different things, but we do have a very active public education and outreach type of program. As I said last time, you can go on our website, and there's a position there where you can, depending on the languages you speak, that has that information there on what to do for various emergencies. So with the Hillside Fire coming up, we've also got, at the end of this month, we still got a number of events we're working with. We'll bring in our EOC teams and walk them through a scenario that we do every year to prep for the Hillside Fire. And it's basically an evaluation of conditions and development of a mass care plan to support that. Pick a different grid or a group of grids, how many people are in that, how many have special needs, where would we put them, how do we feed them, that whole sort of thing. So we do that towards the end of the month, every April. So, like I say, I didn't want to presume to try to teach you something. If these things are helpful in understanding it, then I achieve my goal. If you would like a more complete discussion of it, I'd be glad to do that. Walk you through a scenario, have you come over to the EOC if you're new or something like that, show you what we do, talk you through how things would unfold from the EOC point of view, and then, or any other emergency legislation. But
When a new assembly members get stated, we're going to want to do that. I want them to go to the EOC and see how that all works.
sure.
Maybe we'll have a few new members coming on. Going out to neighbors, do you guys do anything with apartment buildings that people are above the second, third floor? There's a way to get a tool, for lack of a better word. You can hook on your window to get you out of the apartment. Because we had a problem down here with this fire that occurred on Minnesota, where we had people jumping out of the third floor window. Not a successful thing to do. So are we talking to people and telling them, hey, if you're on the third floor, go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy these kits and hook into the window so you can crawl out of your house?
We are. And as a matter of fact, that's part of that make a plan, get a kit. Those are the kinds of things that are good to go in a kit. How to, egress devices, those sorts of things. How to equip your home. How to, fasteners so bookshelves don't fall over the window or on you or things like that. So we do incorporate that in our presentations. And like I say, we try and we go to the fire department open houses, we go to anything we're invited to, we get asked to go to things, so we try and reach out, particularly those underserved parts of the community that don't get that kind of information.
Here's one thing that might help. Call the FCC. They've got a meeting on the third Wednesday of every month, and the director is representative for all the community councils are there. So if you want to get up to community council, I would suggest you go there and talk to them if you haven't done it yet. That way you can set up appointments for all the community councils.
And we've done that. We've done that. So, yeah, that's one of our outreach mechanisms. Sure.
Question from somebody members. Yes, Pete.
mandatory or directed evacuation order. I see reports on news where hurricane areas and that type of thing where people were told to evacuate, but they don't.
What happens to them?
Yeah, we can't go in there physically remove them.
No, I highlighted this, because that's usually one of the most frequently asked questions. If you turn to page 21, there's a couple of pages in, and you'll see at the top there highlighted in yellow, implied consent and refusal to evacuate. And so, as we spent a lot of time building this plan with fire department, the police department, and the state. So implied consent would be if you're not mentally capable of making a sound decision, like a child who's 14 or 12. My mom said, "Don't leave the house with strangers." Well, you're coming with me. That would be a degree of implied consent, and they talk about it there. Refusal to evacuate. We generally, that's at the discretion of the police department. I was still in Chief Tully's thunder, but when you're ordered to evacuate, you don't do it. You can be cited for that. Not necessarily, but you can be cited for it, and there's a state statute that does that. That's up to the police department. They don't want to have to go, when you're trying to get people out of there, wrestle people, handcuff them, and that's a waste of effort. So, hey, look, we told you, they'll make note of it, and then that person can be cited. That's, depending on the conditions and other things and the size of the evacuation, that's really the discretion there at the police department. But it is, you're violating a lawful order. So that's what you have it in there. It's got some flexibility where they can do that. They can do what they think they need to. So the troopers use that as well. They say they're not going to haul somebody along. And that's a wild card. It's like, look, we're telling you to get out of here. We're not going to be able to help you after this. I don't know of anybody who's ever been cited, but I know that's something that they can do. Let's say anyhow.
The military were doing a scenario in which we were evacuating civilians from Korea, and we had people getting off 130s with their dogs. Because that depends on not leaving Korea without the pets. And we had to do the whole scenario. How do you feed the pets when they get here? Because they were not leaving Korea without the pets. So, anything else? Well, thank you, gentlemen. We're down to audience participation. We've got time, so anybody would like to talk to us for 3 minutes? Just give us your name and tell us what you want to talk about. Anybody?
I'll give a quick little story. Talk about emergency action. When my kids were growing up, I used to take them, I had a record for basic training, with drill out with drill sergeant. And so the cue was, when they heard that record, they get their ass out of the house. And I would do it 3 o'clock in the morning, anytime, maybe every 6 months or so. They hated it, of course, but now they're adults, and they do it to their kids because they know the importance of fast reaction. So it works.
Anybody else want to talk to somebody about anything?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Scott Stansbury Device Pit Stop. I'm the owner of the store that you've probably seen on the news a lot.
Burglarized 4 or 5 times?
3 times, and again, almost this Saturday morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, we saw it live on our phones, courtesy of the video surveillance system, and the police officers responded and did try to arrest the person that was trying to break in, but they did not physically witness it, and the video didn't record it until after he had stepped away and came back, so we had no video proof of him breaking in other than me and my wife watching it. We need help. As business owners in this town, we need help. It's the business owners, the small businesses that are keeping this city alive by paying salaries, and the people who then can buy homes and pay taxes and all this other bit. But in my instance, my second burglary, I did not even file a claim, and my insurance went up $600 a month. That's money I'd rather give to my employees as a raise, but now I got to put $3,000 in additional sales just to pay for that insurance increase. This last burglary was $27,000. It has not paid off yet. It's been 2 months, and I have no clue what this is going to do to me. But as a small business operator, I don't have a big fancy house. I don't drive fancy cars. Everything I have is old. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Actually, I'm living on my savings because I have yet to make any money in the store. And I could lose my business, and my employees could lose their jobs, all because of the high rate of burglary in this town. We need help. we need it bad. A competitor, a good friend of mine, High Frequency, has been burglarized twice in the last 2 weeks. They sell cell phones. We sell cell phones. We know it's the druggers that are going after it, but there's no consequences if they get arrested. So, I mean, what do we do? You know, we keep going until we get out of business. We need help, and I ask all of y'all's help. I know y'all's hands are tied on so many things, but I know as city leaders and chiefs and all this, we can form and work together to try to find a solution.
Is there anything we can do to that? To look at
So,
this place and
I'm
tell
aware of
him
those
What we
situations.
need to do to that. What he needs to do to get equipment to better stop people from breaking into it.
So I'm aware of those situations, and it's really unfortunate, and I don't know where we are in the progress. I've personally asked for the police department to contact him and come out and evaluate your store. We have crime prevention specialists, and I don't know if...
Nobody has contacted me, no, sir.
It's something that has been put into motion already, and I'm sorry that they haven't made it to you yet, and I think this was before the third burglary. And I'm really look forward to having someone come out and evaluate the environmental design of the building, things like that, tips that we could provide you and so on, and just make sure that we communicate with you as much as we can and help you in any way that we can.
And
I'll be honest with you, it's a very personal concern to me. I expressed the concern to my command staff, and I have not checked on the progress of that, and I will follow up and do that for you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Will you be here next month at our meeting? I'm gonna ask
Yes,
this
sir.
question. I want to know when they've been in contact with you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
We're somewhat similar. I own a small business too, and I got burgled by, fortunately, a very inept fellow dressed as a ninja. But the police were there within 5 minutes. I mean, he was not in the store long, and I think was heard coming and bolted out there. But and I think
Ninja skills got him out.
so in a case like that, and I don't know how many cars would have responded. I mean, there were at least 4 officers showing up on our videos. So you might have had a car show up, and then they would wait until someone else showed up. What's the procedure? Until
It's going to really depend on what information was provided to the police department, such as was an alarm or is information called in by a citizen or a business owner. And then we respond accordingly with the resources that are available at the time. Sometimes officers are on other calls that, such as if it's a medical assist, they're going to go to that medical assist first and make sure that person's getting life-threatening, life-saving type of attention before they would go to a property crime. If this incident involves somebody inside the store, like a business owner, an employee, things like that, then that would be considered even a higher risk, and so on. So it's really based on the information available and the resources available at any given time.
Well, I was impressed. They were there quick. We saw watching the video, some internal things we changed so that if anyone breaks in, they're very limited on where they would go. But I share your pain. It's frustrating. No vulnerable.
Mr. Chairman, I've been monitoring the legislature, and they've been talking about amendments to SB 91. Unfortunately, it looks like they might be stalled right now because they're switching over to trying to figure out a way to finalize the budget. And it looks like they might not get the amendments passed this year at SB 91, which would be unfortunate because the changes that they made to the criminal code last year, some of them need to be adjusted because the criminals have figured out how much they can steal and not go to jail. So I think we need to make some changes to that so we can actually enforce some laws and put some people away if that's what it takes.
Mr. Jackson, then?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, this gentleman right here is Mr. Train, my constituent. And Mr. Train and I met with him and several other business owners in the Midtown community twice. And the second time we met, we were grateful to have W.G. McCoy there. And we brainstormed
Yes, ma'am, that was done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything, Chris? Does anybody else wish to address us on any issue? Not seeing anybody then. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks for being here.